Perfect, ready to start. So let's have a look at the introduction. You've got a nice heading there, market research. Before we start with this topic, let's just recap what marketing is. So chapter 16 was describing what it is. Can you summarize marketing for us? What is it?
It just refers to the consumer, and I don't relate it to economics. It's just how much of the market the business owns and how advertising is done.
Okay, is advertising marketing?
No.
No, it's part of the process. Yeah. So marketing is more like the brand, as you said, in terms of the image of the product, the consumer's preferences, etc. So marketing is very broad in terms of scope. So now we need to limit the scope a little bit. So we need to expand on different topics. The first topic here is the market research, which is chapter 17. Introduction here, they said in the previous chapter, distinction between product orientation and market or customer orientation was explained. At the heart of market orientation is market research and be focused on what customers are willing to buy. There's the key. So NB, we need information on the consumer's preferences. And that's what market research is going to be looking at. Uncovering what people are going to be buying in terms of their willingness, tastes, preferences, market condition, competitors. Right, all of that needs to be analyzed. Tastes and preferences. Then they talk about market research. They do give you a nice green heading there. You like writing those down? Okay, so definition. Process of collecting, recording, and analyzing data about consumers/customers, competitors and the markets. Great, so it's quite detailed in terms of the process. We look at collecting, recording, and analyzing. That's the key. So it's looking at the data collection, basically. Data collection to create information. So it's very similar to accounting, except accounting we're looking at numbers in terms of transactions. Here, market research is looking at data collection and recording of data, but more in terms of preferences, people's wanting to buy a certain item.
Yeah.
So on the previous page, there was a heading here about market research. They said market research is a broad and far-reaching process. It is concerned not just with finding out whether consumers are willing to buy a particular product or not. It is also trying to establish the characteristics of consumers, i.e., which consumers are going to be buying which products. So we also analyze the consumer, e.g. demographic. So it's not only about the product, which product we're going to be selling, but it could also be about the consumer. Who are we targeting? The market research will tell us, people that are maybe in a certain age group doing certain things will be buying certain products. That's the key.
Is it about finding your target market?
Could be. That could be part of the research that you would do as part of the market research. So market research is broad. That's what they said here. First paragraph, broad and far-reaching. It's a process though. So the process involves collecting data and information. So let's see why we need this. Paragraph or heading number 1, the need for market research. So in other words, why do we need this particular topic? Well, there are going to be certain benefits for getting this information, and that's what we need to focus on. So what is the benefits? Why do we need it? So number one, to reduce the risks associated with new product launches. Reduce the risk of launching new products. Right, so do you agree, if you're going to be creating a new product, do you know if the market will like the product or not? You don't. So how can you test if the market will like the product? Is by doing market research. That's what they've said here. So why do we need to do market research? Well, it's going to reduce the risk of creating something that nobody wants to buy. That's obviously a problem. Then they said in the paragraph, investigating potential demand for a new product or service. So what does the reducing the risk involve? Getting the demand. Okay, identify the demand for a new product or service. So before we even launch the product, we're going to decide, is this a good or bad idea? We're going to survey, we're going to interview, we're going to ask as many people as we can about this new product or service. And if everybody wants it, we're going to create it, we're going to make it, because that reduces the risk. It's just data, it's just information. People need data and information to make better decisions. Second reason, to predict future demand changes. Predicting future demand changes, if we're predicting something, we're looking at what?
In the future.
Yeah, we're trying to how can I say, uncover what we think is going to happen in the future. So with data, do you agree? Data is very powerful, because the more information you've got, you can actually make an educated guess in terms of what is going to materialize or what is going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that information, you can't really make an educated guess. Right? If you guess, it's just a guess.
Yeah.
It'll probably be inaccurate. Right, so predicting future demand changes. That's the next bit. Predicting.
Sorry, can I get a tissue? Sorry, I forgot the tissue.
Shame, no problem.
Sorry.
Yeah, predicting. I'll just write down the heading. Predicting future demand changes. Yeah, future demand changes. So we're not just looking at the product in terms of, am I going to be creating product X or product Y? I'm also going to be looking at, well, is there demand for this product going forward? So can I predict a change in demand? So here they said, in terms of an example, a travel firm may wish to investigate social and other changes to see how this might affect the demand for holidays in the future. For instance, the growth in the number of single-person households may suggest that there could be a rising demand for single-type holidays. Okay, so that's preference. Right, so what type of package am I going to provide people with? If people are more inclined to travel on their own, then maybe there's a demand for those types of holidays. So then the travel agency would have to provide more of those types of products. Okay, so it's very specific to adapting and changing to the market. And the only way you're going to know what the market wants is by surveying and questioning the actual market. Okay, let's create another slide. Let's carry on with this heading. Okay, number 3. Explaining patterns in sales of existing products and market trends. Explaining sales and sales of existing products and market trends. So that's also important. So if we're doing market research, we would uncover exactly what the market is currently experiencing in terms of sales. So which of our products are selling the most? Are pencils selling more than pens? Are colored pens selling more than normal black and blue pens? Right, so what is the market wanting? What is the trend? The trend is looking at something that's current in the market, that's almost like a...
And how long will it be there for?
Yeah, like what do you call them? Almost like a fad. Like something comes, like something is like popular now and then it sort of dies out. Okay, it's that type of thing, looking at the trend, looking at the demand. Here in the textbook, they said market research is not just undertaken for new products, but conducted for existing products too. Sales at the fashion retailer Gap had, by the end of 2018, increased by 8% compared to the year earlier. So Gap is obviously a large clothing manufacturer, and they were surveyed and they saw that their sales had increased. So that obviously uncovers certain trends. So which products did they sell the most of? Maybe certain products sell better than others. Okay. Number 4. Assessing the most favored designs, flavors, styles, promotions, and packages. Assess the most favored. Favored is just another word for popular. So popular designs, flavors, styles, promotions, and packages. Again, that's looking at data and information. So what promotion did well? If we placed an advert on the TV and the advert was targeting a specific, maybe demographic, was that advert successful or wasn't it? If it was successful, then that's very, very good. We'll probably do something similar in the future. Other things, flavors. What happens if we launch a new flavor of iced tea, yes, or any other drink or beverage? Is that flavor going to be providing a good market in terms of demand or not? So here they said customer tastes have different customer tests different versions of the product, and they promote and enable the business to focus on different aspects of design and performance that the customer may rate very highly. These can be incorporated in the finished products. Market research can therefore be used to uncover the following: the market size, the customer taste, the product, the strengths and weaknesses. I think this is worthwhile writing down because they put bullets under here. So let's write them down. Number 1, market size. This is the assessment that you would do. Strengths and weaknesses of products.
Market size?
Market size. Second one, strengths and weaknesses of products. Effectiveness of promotions. So in other words, which promotions worked, which ones didn't. Competitors. And their unique selling point, USP. USPs. Distribution methods. So how do people like to buy their goods? Do they like buying goods online? Do they like buying goods in person? Do they like going to the store? How do they distribute the products? And the last one is the packaging. Right, so if we change the packets, does that increase sales? It might. Or it might not. Exactly. So if you make if you make the packaging more attractive, you might increase your sales. But it might affect the pricing in terms of cost, exactly. Okay, good. So those are the 4 that are described in the textbook. Okay, number 4 had quite a few bullets underneath. New topic, another heading. Market research process. Now we look at how do we do it. So now we know what market research is, we know why we need it, now we need to know how to do it. And this is focusing on process. Yeah, why do we need market research? That's what we looked at there. Those are all the bullets. So if they ask you a question in the exam, why is market research important? You basically just describe everything that's underneath there.
The 4 benefits.
Exactly, 4 benefits. And you could go in more detail if you wanted to. Now we're looking at how do we actually create this data, this information. What do we need to do in order to get this information? So the process, you've got 3 points. It's not too long. Number 1, first thing that you need to do is identify the management problem. That's the first thing. Number 1.
Okay, can I have a second, sorry? Process.
Yeah, it's a 3-step process. Step number 1 is identifying a problem. That's always the first step. It's with everything in life. You just need to identify what's wrong. Okay, once you know what's wrong, then you can identify ways to fix it. Exactly, solve the problem. Okay, so a lot of this can be quite basic in terms of interpretation. You just need to apply your mind towards this particular area, which is market research. So the first step would be to identify the problem. So give me an example of a problem that could exist.
But why is it management problem? What do you mean by like management problem?
It's something that affects the management,
Okay.
because management would have different problems that they would have to address. Market research would help them get information to solve those problems. So can you think of a management problem that a business would have? Let's even relate it to your mom's business. Let's think about the law firm. Can you think of any management problem that exists currently? It can be small, it can be big, it doesn't matter, but
I don't know.
like from an outsider looking in. Okay, so maybe look
Let's
at
just say
something
any
different.
business, maybe motivating, not motivating.
Okay, but we look at market research.
Okay.
So you look at the product or the service.
Maybe not advertising enough.
Okay, that could be a problem. There you go, you've identified one. So now, do you agree advertising could be a problem? Are there different ways to advertise? Of course there is. So now, you might be giving little gifts to all the estate agents. Okay, that's one way to market and advertise.
Yeah.
Right. How effective is that marketing or advertising? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Okay, so that's one area that you could look at. The textbook here says, this is the single most important step in the whole research process. A business could spend thousands of dollars on undertaking market research, but if it has no clear purpose or problem that needs investigating, the money would be wasted. So that's the key. What are we doing? We're trying to identify a purpose. That's the key. Purpose of the investigation. So now we know, well, is advertising effective? We don't know. The only way we're going to know is by getting the data, the information. Here they've given you some examples of problems that might be investigated. What is the market size? That's important. Right? How big is the market? And if the market is so big, how much of the market do we have? That's the key. Okay, that's the data. See, right? So you want to know what the management problem is. How big of the market, or how big is the market? And then number 2, how much of the market do we have? Something else? No, these are just examples.
Oh, okay.
The second one, why are sales falling? So if people aren't buying your product, Should you investigate that? Definitely. Market research. Number 3, how can we break into a market in a different country? Also, if you want to start selling products in a different country, so for example, if you had to move this business to Australia, it's a different market. So how are you going to break into that market? Number 4, how can we most effectively meet the challenges of new competitors? Right, so if new competitors are coming in the market, how do we deal with that competition? What are we going to do differently to set our business apart? Okay, that's important. See, that's the problem. The problem is, well, there are competitors. So if there's competitors, how am I going to deal with my competitors? Right, that's the problem. And then we need to do research to uncover the reasons or the steps or the decision making that's going to affect us. Okay. And the last one, what customer groups will buy the products and what customer groups don't buy your products? That's also important. How can we change people that don't buy them to people that do buy them? Okay, the last bit that we can maybe add here is, without setting out the problem, much unnecessary data would be gathered, which might prevent the real issues or problems from being investigated at all. So important. Purpose of the investigation keeps the research focused on the problem. So we're not going to be getting huge amounts of information and all that information is worthless. It's not going to help us. Right, so for example, let's say we were looking at the size of the market, but now we're going to go interview customers and we're going to ask them what product they like buying. Is that going to tell us the size of the market? No, it's not. It's going to tell us what the customers like buying, and that's the problem. So we need to keep the problem at the back of our mind when doing the investigation, because there's so much data that you could uncover. The data that you want must be relevant and applicable to what you're trying to solve. Okay, so asking someone what products they buy is not going to give you an idea of how big the market is. Number 2, second heading, well, subheading, research objectives. That's the next category. Here they say, these objectives must obviously tie in with the original problem. They must be set in such a way that when they have been achieved, they provide all the information needed to solve the problem. So objectives, these specify what data/information must be collected. That's important. So if the objective is to measure X, Y, and Z, we need to get information that's going to help us measure those items. They did give you some examples here in the textbook. Number 1, how many people are likely to buy product X? What am I going to research then?
Customer preferences.
Yes, I could look at that, and I could look at sales, maybe. Okay, or the products. So which products sold the most? That will tell me which product is probably the most popular, possibly. If the price of product good, or not product, if the price of good Y is reduced, how much will this increase sales? Okay, something else to consider. So there's your price elasticity. Okay, that's something economic related, but it still applies here. So if the price of good Y had to decrease, are our sales going to be increasing? Okay, sometimes you can make things cheap and people don't buy more of it because people don't need more of it. But some things you make cheap and people buy a lot of it. So that would affect demand. Okay. Right, number 3. Sources of data. In brackets, primary versus secondary. Right, here we need to differentiate between what the difference is between primary and secondary. So do you agree a source of data is where you're getting the information?
Yeah.
So now, are you going to get the information directly from the consumer, or are you going to get the information from a secondary party, okay, for someone that might have data on the actual topic? So to differentiate, Primary research collects first-hand data and is being collected by the organization for the first time. Primary equals data collected by the company for the first time. Right, so that's you going out into the market and interviewing all the customers. That's primary data. Okay, primary data means you collect it. You as a business go out into the market and ask every single person that's buying a product for their view and their opinion. And then I'm going to take that information and I'm going to analyze and I'm going to get data, or not data, but recommendations from it. Right, secondary. Secondary data is collecting information from second-hand sources. That's the definition they've given you here in the green box. Data provided by second-hand sources. Right, so what do I mean by second-hand source? Well, that means someone else went into the market and did the research.
And we're using that information.
And you're going to be taking that information and using it to make your decisions. Exactly. So which method do you think is better?
Primary.
Okay, why?
Because it's your own information, so you can, it's correct.
But what's the disadvantage for taking
Time.
yes and costs? So do you agree, if you had to do the research yourself, it's going to cost a lot more, it could take a lot more time and effort, do you agree? Versus using someone else's data and information, which has already been collected. Okay, I don't know if you want to write those definitions down.
Well, yeah, I did. Primary and secondary. Yeah,
okay. New heading, well, new subheading. Sources of secondary data. Sources of secondary data. Let's write this down. Right, there's a lot here that they've given you. And the only reason why they've done that is because, do you agree, is it cheaper to use secondhand or primary data?
Secondhand.
It's cheaper to use secondhand data. Right, it's very, very costly for a company to go collect its own primary data. Okay, because now you've got to interview hundreds of thousands of different
people.
Exactly. That takes time and effort.
And you need someone to do it.
Exactly, that's going to cost money for the business to send someone out to interview all these people. Okay. So when we look at secondary data, there are different sources of information. So do you agree, if I have access to data, I could use that data to my benefit? And that's what they're trying to do here. They're saying, well, where can I source secondhand information? I.e., where can I get some data that I can use to help run the business more effectively? So number one is the government publications. Government publications. Right, so what does government do?
How many are there, sorry?
There's 7.
7, okay, cool.
So what does government do? Government is going to be collecting data on the citizens, do you agree?
Yeah.
And if they're collecting data on the citizens, can we use that data? Yes, you can. So depending on what they collect, it can either be very useful or not as useful. Here, they're giving you some examples. So, population census. I don't know if you've seen a census yet, or if your household has had to fill out one, but it happens every 4 years. It doesn't happen every year. Only every 4 years, the government does this massive survey. And then they send every single household the survey that they need to fill out. So, how many people in the household? Who's living in the household? How old are they? Are they male or female?
Gender.
Yes, exactly.
Race.
All of that. And that's what the government does every 4 years in this country. In this textbook, they talk about the UK. Obviously, it's a Cambridge textbook, so everything's about the UK.
Oh, this actually shows something else. Look here. It says Cambridge University Press.
Yes, I know. Okay.
It's
As I said, your content that you're covering is at a much higher level because it's something that like you would do, like the economics that you're doing, you would actually do in first year economics. Yeah. So it's good in a way because at least you have an advantage then when you do go to varsity. Okay. All right. So population consensus, social trends, economic trends, annual abstract of statistics, family expenditure. Those are different things that the government would collect on its population. Right, and the government would give you what? Data about the country. So it's very, very, very summarized.
Like the unemployment rate.
Yeah, summarized information. It's broad, not very specific. And that's the disadvantage with that. So as much as it's nice to use data from the government's information is going to be quite summarized because they're not really going to go in depth, in detail. Like you wouldn't be able to say, well, okay, this individual in this city bought this product. You'll never be able to do that. You might just be able to say, well, okay, there are so many people in the city, so many of them have bought so many items, but at a high level, okay, at a summary level. B, local libraries and government offices.
I don't really think people use libraries anymore.
They're still around, but yeah, probably not used as often as they were in the past because of the internet. See, internet's one of them, okay? Right, so I can go to a local library, I can go to a government office, local government office, and I can ask them for information about the community. Right, so if we had to go to a local municipality in our area, you would find data there, you would find information. They would probably be able to tell you how many people live in the suburb. Right, they'll probably be able to give you that information. Right, if you go to the government, they could just say, well, there's so many people in the country. X amount of people are living in this province, so many people living in that province, etc. Right, but now if you want to dig deeper, you need to go to local government or you need to go to local libraries. Right, libraries might not give you that much information, but they can provide you with some. C, a trade organization. That's a nice one.
Well, the government offices give you a little bit more information than government.
A little bit more detailed information. Slightly more detailed, slightly less summarized. Okay. Because you're digging a little bit deeper. For example, A is looking at government publication. That's broad. That's the whole country. B is looking at the local governments. So going to the municipality.
Okay.
C, trade organizations. What is a trade organization? What do you think it does?
It has all the information of the trade in the country.
About a specific industry. Okay, so when they talk about a trade, they're referring to an industry. In the example here in your textbook, they said a furniture retailers association. So what information do you think we can get from them? Info about furniture retailers. Right, because that's the association. Then another one, engineering employees federation. Right, so again, that's focusing on one area, engineering. So trade organizations, brackets, businesses in similar industry, or let's say in similar,
specific to industry.
yeah, let's use that. Okay, businesses in a specific industry will have a body that manages the, or that groups and manages all of the businesses. Okay, example, a representative of. Let's actually write on one of these.
Like groups.
Furniture Retailers Association. That's just one example. So I can get lots of information about furniture businesses from the Furniture Retailers Association. Saves time and effort. D, market intelligence reports. Right, what is that? Let's discuss it. These are detailed reports on individual markets and industries produced by specialists representing research agencies. So specialists representing agencies conduct research. And that can be useful in business. So instead of us having to conduct the research, these other third parties go out there and gather the data and information. Right, and then once they've gathered it, they go and sell it to all the different companies. Some examples here, Mintel reports, Keynote reports, Euromonitor reports. These are all different European sources of information where you have specialists from agencies doing the research. All right? Mm-hmm. Okay, next one. Newspaper and specialist publications. Okay, with these, you're looking at very, very niche type of scenarios. So, for example, if you were, okay, so you're very passionate about music. If you wanted to create your own publication, you could. And because you have that knowledge and information, you could maybe bring out a 20-pager publication that just talks about music. Maybe you review different instruments. Maybe you go and interview artists. Maybe you attend all the events.
This one will be very specific and like.
Which one? D.
Yeah, because it's from agencies.
Yes, D can be very specific because remember the agency would have been commissioned to research a specific area. Yeah. So it can be detailed. It could also be general. It just depends on the information that they have. Okay. Sorry. All right. E. So what we were saying is that you could bring out your own publication. And would your publication give information about the business or the industry? Yeah. It could. Okay. E.g., Financial Times. That's one of the examples in the textbook. They also talk about these other newspaper reports which are UK publications. Okay, we don't have these in South Africa. Financial Times we do though. We do have access to that information. Okay, so Financial Times would provide you with information about finance. And it would talk about a specific market, a specific industry, a specific business area. And that could be very useful, right? Because the newspaper and publication or specialist publication, they need to do the research before they present the information. F, internal company records. So will the company have its own data? Of course they will. Data that's present internally. Right, so I could go to the accounting department and I could pull data there about sales. Right, so I can see, okay, that product sold a lot, that product didn't sell too much. Right, that would be an internal company record. And then the last one is the internet. Very, very powerful source of information. The internet has transformed secondary data collection, but it only has access to data that has already been gathered from sources listed above. So the internet is a source of second-hand information. So basically the internet is almost like a collaboration of other people's data and information. Only problem here though, they mentioned in the textbook, is accuracy and relevance needs to be checked. Right, so you can't trust everything you see on the internet. Some things aren't true, some things need to be checked. Right, so you've probably heard of the term fake news. Right, that can happen where certain businesses present information to the market that's not accurate. It's not reliable, it's not true. So that's the one disclaimer that they mentioned here. When using the internet, always check the accuracy and relevance of data that's being used. Sources need to be checked. Alright, happy with that? Perfect. Very, very important, summary. Advantages, disadvantages for primary and secondary. This you'll need to study. So let's put a note here. NB C page 236 bracket advantages and disadvantages. For primary and secondary. Yeah, it's just too much to write out, so I'm just going to refer you to the textbook. It is important to know why we're going to be using each of these different forms of data and information. Okay, methods of primary research. Now we're changing the focus.
So let's see what I can teach on methods.
There's a lot here, so I would do it separate.
Methods?
Yeah, all of this is part of it. So even quantitative research technique, that's part of it. Sampling would be part of it. That's all the data analysis. And then that's the end. Almost. Okay, there's some stats here, hey? Those are the maths. Okay. You can start it, okay, maybe over there, just put the theory. And then the analysis you can do separate.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll show you what to do. Let's create a heading for this. Methods of primary research. Right, so just to recap, primary research deals with what?
Doing it yourself.
Exactly.
First-hand.
Business going out on the market, getting first-hand information from the customers. Right, so what did they say here? Number one, a field of research that can itself be divided into quantitative and qualitative. They're the two groups. Quantitative, B, qualitative. Right, so what is the difference? Well, the word quantitative, there's a word quanti there, do you agree? So when you see the word quanti, what does that mean? Or what does it refer to? Quanti, quantify, quantity.
Yeah, quantity.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
So this is looking at measuring things using facts and, not facts, figures. Right, numbers. quantities. That's the measurement. Qualitative, have a look at the word there. Quali, what does quali refer to? Quality, do you agree? So with quality, you're looking at other considerations that are not figures in terms of measurements, but more things like preferences. Okay, so for example, if you like...
so there's only two different methods, hey?
Yeah.
And then they specify each
Yes.
of them. Okay.
Yeah. So the two different methods can be grouped into different categories because they give you data that's specific to a specific area. So for example, qualitative. If I like blue and I don't like red, is that quantitative or is that qualitative?
Pardon?
If I like the color blue and I don't like the color red, is that quantitative or is that qualitative?
Qualitative.
It's qualitative because I'm not measuring anything, do you agree? But now if I had to ask you how many people like blue and how many people like red, it becomes quantitative. See the difference? Okay, so qualitative, things that cannot be measured with numbers. That's qualitative. And now we need to label or insert all the ones that they've given you in the textbook. Right, so the first group that they gave you was qualitative. So this one down here. Okay, what's the first one?
I'm just quickly writing.
Oh, you're writing
this out.
definition. Okay, good.
What did you say? Things that cannot be measured.
With numbers or figures.
Just give me 1 second to type that too. Okay, so it's qualitative.
Is that right? Almost, okay.
And you said can't be measured. No, it can be measured.
Qualitative, things that cannot be measured, because we're not looking at numbers, we're looking at things like your preference. Do you like blue or do you like red? Which color is your favorites? You can't measure that. It's just blue or red. But if I ask you how many people like blue and how many people like red, then that's a completely different discussion. And that becomes quantitative.
Okay, cool. Got it.
What's number one?
Well, qualitative research,
Yeah, focus groups.
focus groups.
Okay, that's qualitative.
Okay, so at least there is only one.
There should be more.
Research technique.
Oh, they only give you one. Okay, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's
There are
research.
others though, but they only gave you one. Okay,
Yeah.
so focus groups, gathering of people where they are asked qualitative questions Right, gathering of people where they are asked qualitative questions about the business products and services. Okay, a focus group is just a way to almost observe what your customers are liking in terms of preference. Okay, so here they said, in terms of example, focus groups are widely used to obtain feedback about new products, new brands, new advertisements, and so on before they're launched. Information can be accurate and realistic, and responses are given by individuals from interviews or from questionnaires, where respondents do not have the discussion opportunity presented by focus groups. Okay, that would be separate. So maybe underneath this, just to be more specific,
So this
questionnaires.
is qualitative.
That's qualitative, yes. Questionnaires.
Qualitative first.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter which one you put first. Questionnaires and interviews. Discussion groups. That's what they've given you.
Focus groups, gathering of people where they are asked
Qualitative questions about the business products and services. It's basically asking for someone's opinion. Can you measure someone's opinion? No. So what type of data is that? It's qualitative.
people where they are asked. So why did you say that this was qualitative? You said because
you can't measure those things in terms of numbers. So for example, do you like red or do you like blue? There's no measurement there, right? It's just your preference for a specific color. But if I asked you, how many people in the room like blue and how many people in the room like red, then I'm quantifying that. Okay, then I'm measuring it. Slightly different. Okay, so we're looking at qualitative. Qualitative is looking at things that cannot be measured in terms of numbers.
Okay, cool.
Okay, second category, quantitative. Quantitative looks at measuring things. So if I'm measuring things using numbers, mathematics or statistics, I'm going to have different methods that I can apply. So the first one, we'll discuss each one separately. I'm just going to list them here and then I'm going to write them down on separate pages. Observation and recording. Test marketing. And the last one, consumer surveys. Those are the three. That's what they've given you in the textbook.
Okay, so it's still under this.
It's still under methods for primary research,
Okay.
but it's looking at this one, quantitative. Qualitative was short, there was just a note about focus groups, that's it.
So, okay, so I'm just going to write all of those.
Yeah, there's three. We're going to expand on all three.
Quantitative is also.
Yeah, we'll expand on all three, but we first need to just list them. The textbook gives you three forms of quantitative analysis.
Okay, so that is observation and recording.
The spelling here, observation.
Okay.
Right, so now let's look at each of them in detail. I'm going to make a new page. Right, observation and recording. What do you think that involves? Remember, quantitative. So what are we going to measure?
Numbers.
Exactly. So what would we measure for observing people?
Their preferences.
Oh, no, you can't measure someone's preference. You would measure the people.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, we could split the group. How many people like blue? How many people like red? If you like red, sit on the left. If you like blue, sit on the right.
Okay.
Okay, what are we going to count? How many people like blue? How many people like red? That's the key. Okay, so here in the textbook they say, using this approach, market researchers observe and record how consumers behave. They count the number of people. Right, so observation, counting. The number of people.
That bought the product also.
Yeah, they bought the product, they chose a specific type of product or color or preference, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, but it's the counting of. Right, what else could I look at? I could look at time. Okay, so record sales over a period of time. I can observe the new display in terms of product on the shelves. We could look at what else they mention in the textbook. An observation does not give researchers the opportunity to ask for explanations of behavior. There's the key. Right, let's write that keyword down. Behavior is not explained. Behavior is not explained, comma, only quantified. Alright, so do we care why people like blue or red? No, we don't. Okay, when we look at quantitative analysis, we just want to know how many people like the color blue and how many people like the color red. If more people like the color blue than red, we're probably going to package our product in a blue packet. Okay, or we're going to use blue as the packaging. Right, and that's what you're going to do. So that's behavior. We're not going to explain the behavior. We're not going to try to explain why people like blue more than they like red. That's not relevant. Okay, that would be qualitative analysis.
Okay, so I just want to write that as an example.
Okay, example.
So
how many people like blue versus red? That's qualitative. The point over here that the textbook is trying to describe is no one cares why people choose blue over red. So if more people like blue, fine. If more people like red, that's also fine. The thing is, we're not trying to understand why they chose what they chose.
Just using the number data.
Exactly. You're just wanting to look at the numbers. What do the numbers tell you? Well, the numbers might say 60% of the people like blue versus red. So based on the numbers, our packaging must be blue. Does it make sense? Okay, so it's just important to think about this as being numbers, things that you can measure. Don't worry about the reasons behind it. Okay, reasons behind it would be what? Qualitative. Exactly, because qualitative are things you can't measure, but things that can explain people's preferences. Okay, number 2, test marketing. What do you think this involves?
Testing to see if the people like your product or service.
Exactly. So what are we going to measure?
Preferences.
But how though? See, when you say measuring preferences, you need to be a bit more specific because it's quantifying.
So, qualitative.
Not qualitative, we're looking at quantitative. So what could you measure?
How many people would choose this product over that one?
Okay, so test marketing is a little bit different than that. It's a bit more detailed. So here they said, this can take place after a decision has been made to produce a limited quantity of a new product, but before a full-scale national launch is made. It involves promoting a standard product to a limited geographical area. Right, so what am I going to do with the test marketing type quantitative analysis? I'm going to give out samples. Samples of a new product. And then what are we going to measure? We're going to measure numerical things that we can actually count. So here they said we're going to promote the product and we're going to record the customer's reactions and sales figures. So we can look at recording, reaction, and sales. Okay, so reaction could be, well, if I created 1 million products, 1 million samples, and we were prepared to give out those samples, how many of those samples were actually taken by the consumer? Do you agree? Because sometimes there can be samples for products that you don't want to buy, and then you won't take those samples. Sometimes there will be samples that you want, and then you'll definitely take them. Okay, so we could count that. We can count how many we produced. We can count how many we gave out. Alright, so let's say we're going to go stand at one of the robots, a busy intersection, and we're going to hand out these samples of a new product. Do you agree? People are either going to take the samples or not. And then we can say, well, in the day we were able to give out X or Y. Right? How many samples did we give out? See, that's the counting. That's why test marketing is looking at that. It's looking at the sales figure, it's looking at the reaction. How did people react to the test that you had conducted? Last one, consumer surveys. These involve directly asking customers a set of questions about their preferences and opinions. Who to ask, what to ask, how accurate is it? That's what they're looking at here. Okay, so consumer surveys, questions directed at consumers measuring their opinions and preferences. Okay, how is this different to qualitative? Because it's actually quite similar, it kind of overlaps. So what would you measure here?
The opinions.
So we talk about color. Let me ask you these two questions and you can tell me if it's qualitative or quantitative. Do you like blue or red?
That's qualitative.
Okay, that's qualitative. Why?
Because it's their preference.
Yes. Okay, let me ask you this. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like blue?
Still qualitative.
No, because that's quantitative, because now you're quantifying their liking of blue. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now, can I measure their preference? Yes, I can. I can measure their preference now because I'm using a scale. See, as soon as you bring in figures and numbers, you start quantifying stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, because when I ask you, do you like blue or do you like red? I'm not counting anything. You just tell me I like blue or like red. Okay? It's just your preference. But if I ask you, how much do you like blue? Give me a number between 1 to 10. 10, you love blue. 1, you hate blue. Where do you fall in that scale? Right, so if someone says 8, can you measure their preference? Yes, you can. Okay, and then we can measure everybody's preference. We can ask everybody the same question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like blue? And if everybody likes blue a lot, let's say the numbers are above 8, then our packaging must be blue, because blue will work. Okay.
Will catch their eye.
Exactly. Alright, so do you see how different that is? Because opinions and preferences are measured using measurable observations. Okay, I'll shrink this so you can see it. Actually, let's move it up. There you go. Okay, so if I'm looking at preferences and opinions, it is possible to measure them, but you need something like a scale. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like this product? You either hate the product or you love the product, or you're somewhere in between. Okay, now I'm measuring your preference, because now I can say, well, you like this product a lot or you like this product very little, depending. Okay. Alright, just some statistics to end with. There's quite a bit of it in the textbook, and then that covers this chapter. See, median. See, we've actually covered this in maths, median. You might remember that. Arithmetic.
What are they doing?
I think so somebody's busy doing something somewhere. Alright, then they've got range. So the last bit is just statistics. That's the end of this chapter. It's looking at statistics relating to market research. And where would we use statistics? For quantitative analysis. So following on from where we left off here. Okay, so now you know the different methods. Method 1, method 2, method 3. Those are ways that we can get data, we can get information. And this data and information can be measured using figures and numbers. That's the key. Right, ready to carry on? You got that? That was the last bit. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to copy the slide just to keep the heading here. Quantitative and we need to look at stats now. So statistical measures. Statistical measures.
So this is quantitative.
Yeah, it's not quantitative analysis.
So I'm going to put my heading as quantitative analysis using statistical measures.
Yeah, using statistical measures, that's fine. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is decide on a sample size. Sample size, how many people do we need a survey? That's what sample size is looking at. Because do you agree, can I interview everybody in the country?
No,
No, it would be very, 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 very challenging to get every single person's opinion. So what do? I pull out a sample. I'm going to only analyze maybe 100,000 people across 9 different provinces, okay, in the country. That's the first step. Right, so how would you sample your customers? What would you do? Can you think of ways of doing it?
3 samples.
No, how would you sample your customers? So in other words, how would you pull out enough people to sample?
By looking at who your future target market will be interviewed.
Okay, so you could break it up into demographic, like what you're saying. Good. Okay, so here are the different examples, different ways of sampling. Sampling number 1. Simple, random sampling.
Okay, but I don't understand. Are we doing the measures now? What is this?
Yeah, this is the measures. Sampling is a measure. I'm going to take a sample.
As in giving them a sample.
No. Okay, be careful.
I'm confused.
Yeah, I think you're misinterpreting the information. Okay, a sample has 2 meanings.
A sample size.
A sample would be a small item of something, and that you would get from the store. So normally at month end, so like now it's month end, if you go to some of the big supermarkets or malls, you'll see promoters like giving you samples. That's a sample, okay? Because what do? They give you a small little piece of the item that they want you to buy, okay? Here we're looking at sample size, which is how many people am I going to interview or am I going to survey? So can I survey the population? No. So what do? I select a sample of people in the population. Does that make sense? Okay, that's what we're looking at here. So let me just add more there just to make this clearer. The total population is broken up into a sample of people that we can interview. Okay, does that make more sense? Right, and that's what we're looking at.
Okay, so let me write this up again.
Yeah, so now what I'm asking you here about is, well, how would you choose the people that you want to sample? That's the big question. And the how are we going to choose people are the methods that they've described in the textbook. Okay.
So this is an example.
Yes, this is the first form of sample. So now, if I look at this, let me highlight the sample size. Simple random sampling. Okay, so what did we just say? Well, we said, how am I going to select a sample from the population? It is impossible to survey everybody. So what am I going to do? I'm going to choose people.
So is this under this?
Yes.
Okay.
So method number one is a random sample. Random meaning it's anybody. It's not someone that has, I don't know, a specific age or gender. Okay, we're not going to choose men or women. We're just going to choose whoever. We're not going to choose people that are aged 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. It doesn't matter. We're just going to we're going to ask anyone randomly to answer the survey. Does that make sense? Okay, that's the first method. Random sampling. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Second one, systematic sampling. If something is systematic, we're following a system, we're following a process, do you agree? So with this one, they said, this method of sampling is looking at selecting or taking every nth item from a target population. So systematic sampling, not random. Example, choosing every second person. Right, it's not random. So random would be, well, let's say we've got a line, a queue. Let's say there are people lining up to buy something. Okay, let's say we go to the store and there's a queue and we see 10 people in the queue.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at random sampling, what am I going to do? Choose whoever, just like literally randomly choose people. So I might choose person 1, I might choose person 7 and person 8 in the queue. If I've got systematic sampling, it's not random. So what am I going to do? I'm going to interview the first and then every second person thereafter. Does that make sense? Right, so that means it's very, very specific in terms of following a system. So every second person in the queue, I'm going to interview them. I won't interview the first person, I won't interview the third person, but every second person. So
or you might interview all the females.
Possibly. Yeah, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, those are the ones I'm going to interview. Okay, there's a system there. Next one. Stratified sampling. Stratified sampling. And what a stratified sampling looks like, this is recognizing population groups. So using population groups. Example, age, class, etc. Right, so with this one, I'm only going to sample people that are between certain ages. So let's sample people between the age of maybe 30 and 40. Okay, or let's interview, maybe if it's a children's product, if we're trying to bring out a new toy, the toy will be directed at children. So then we'd have to sample kids. Maybe we can sample kids. So if it's a kid's toy, we might sample kids from maybe 5 to 10. Okay, the kids will actually use the toy, not just random people. Okay, next one. Quota sampling. Right, when you have a quota, that means you have to follow a specific amount, a number of. So when we look at quota sampling, you're looking at a percentage of a specific group. A percentage of a specific group. So for example, are there more men or women in South Africa?
I'm not sure, I think it's men.
No, it's actually the other one. There's actually slightly more women in the country than men. Okay, it's not a very big difference. Certain countries have a bigger difference. Like in certain countries where, like in the past, certain countries would have had certain restrictions on having babies, and you can only have one child, right? And that affects the population size because now more families have boys and less girls. Then there's a slight difference between the number of men to women, right? But having said that, quota is looking at a percentage of. So how many men am I going to sample versus how many women I'm going to sample? That's a quota. So quota means you need to sample that specific group, right? So if your quota is 50-50, that means I have to have exactly the same amount of men to women. Does that make sense? Because that's quota sampling. Do you agree if it's random, I could have more men than women, or I could have more women than men? Does that make sense? But that's not what we're looking at here. Quota means you have to meet the quota. X amount of men, X amount of women, X amount of people between certain ages, etc., etc. Okay, the last one. Cluster sampling. What does this involve? Well, when a full sampling frame list is not available or the target population is too geographically dispersed, then cluster sampling will take a sample from just one or a few groups, not the whole population. So cluster sampling, breaking the population down into separate groups, right? Because there's a very big dispersion between the people in the country, right? So that could be something like provinces. A cluster sampling could be, well, let's sample people in Joburg, in Gauteng rather, and let's sample people in the Eastern Cape, okay, or KwaZulu-Natal, right? That could be a cluster. So a cluster would be breaking down the population into a slightly smaller group and then taking or sampling from that group.
So like an area.
Like an area, exactly. Perfect. That's a good way of looking at it. Right. They even use the word town or region here. Okay, they've given you those green definitions again. I don't know if you want to use these or not.
I'll do those in my notes because I got quite good.
Yeah, perfect. How are you doing? Still okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we try and push and finish this chapter?
Yeah.
Think you can make it? Okay, great. Right, so non-probability sampling. These are separate from what we looked at here. So maybe just to highlight this, in brackets here, probability sampling And then we're going to copy paste this non-probability sampling.
So this is non-probability.
The one that we just did was probability.
Oh.
Yeah, the one that we just did. Let me just go back to this page. There's it. Okay, so what you wrote down here, I'll use the green just to keep it color coded. Probability sampling is looking at what we just discussed.
Can I run to the bathroom?
Yeah. Okay, so non-probability sampling, we need to list, there are 4 of them. Let's change the color. Sample size. Number 1, convenience sampling.
So this is still under number 1, hey?
It's still under, no, number 1 is probability sampling. This would be number 2.
Okay.
Non-probability sampling. So convenience sampling is number 1. Convenience is simple, right? You're looking at choosing people that are the easiest to interview.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not going to go and scout for people to interview. You're going to find the quickest, simplest, easiest way where you've got people, consumers that you want to sample, and you're going to interview them. That's what you're going to do. Second one, snowball sampling. Okay, think of a snowball. Snowball's round, right?
Yeah.
What happens when the snowball gets bigger and bigger? Well, when it rolls, it gets like momentum, right? It gets bigger. So snowball sampling here, the first respondent refers to a friend, who then refers to another friend, and then you refer to another friend. So snowball is like that, it's that referral basis of sampling. Referral sampling. One friend tells you to sample another friend, tells you to sample another friend, and so on. Is that okay? Snowball. So just picture a snowball. Convenience sampling.
Oh, is that the first one? Convenience. Okay, let me do snowball first. Snowball is that referral.
Yeah, it's referral. So snowball is where one referral or one respondent gives you a referral, and then that respondent gives you another referral. So it's based on referrals.
Okay.
Just make a note for number 1 as well. Let that one out. Convenience sampling. Convenience just means whoever wants to do the survey can come do the survey. It's convenience. You're not going to pick and choose, right? You're just going to go with the easiest, simplest, quickest way to get people to answer the survey, answer the questionnaire. Because remember, people don't like answering surveys. If it takes an hour, right, that's a lot of time for someone to give you so that you know more information about your markets. Right? And that's why sometimes people get incentives for doing surveys, because sometimes surveys can be very long.
Okay.
3, judgmental sampling. Judgmental sampling, it's biased approach. So I'm going to sample that person because I think they're going to answer the survey very well, or the best. It's a biased approach. Okay, you're prejudging your respondents, which is not actually good, but it's just what they're describing here. Non-probability sampling. Last one, ad hoc quotas. We spoke about quotas before. Ad hoc just means it's different, it varies, it changes. Changing percentages. Okay, so I might say, well, I want 10% of this group, 5% of that group, 10% of that group. Okay. Got that. Okay. Then there's just two things here relating to the quality of the surveys, and then they look at the interpretation of the data. And the interpretation of the data is the last bit, which is the statistical measures, okay, like range, mean, or average. Okay, so the last two considerations here, with the questionnaire, you get two types of questions. You get open questions and you get closed questions. Do you know what the difference is?
So I was speaking about questionnaires.
Yeah, that's just one note about questionnaires, and then how accurate is primary data. That's the last two things here before we look at the measures. So
questionnaires fall under quantitative?
No, it doesn't. It's separate.
Okay.
Questionnaires are completely separate. Yeah, you can. Questionnaires are different, unrelated. Right, so my question to you is, what is the difference between an open and a closed question? Any idea? Okay, so a closed question is generally, example, yes or no. Open question, bracket, long-winded. Okay, so for example, here's a closed question. Are you a student? Yes. There's no like additional information. Do you agree? It's either yes, you are a student, or no, you're not a student. Okay? Here's an open question. Do you like being a student? Okay, that's actually not a very good question. Because you
probably... Why do you like being a student?
That might be better. Exactly, good. Why do you like being a student? That's better. Okay, good. Right, see, you've really got the right understanding. Perfect. Okay, so closed is where you just have you have a yes or a no. You have a true or a false. You have true or false, yes or no, or it's multiple choice. It's very closed. There isn't additional information. And then the last bit here they talk about is accuracy of primary research. Do you think primary research is more accurate than secondary? Why not? So if you say you don't know, okay, let me ask you this.
Oh, primary research is more accurate.
Do you think it's more accurate? But primary research is going to be your preference. So do you agree there could be bias in that? Alright, there's always bias. That's what they're trying to describe here. Reliability of primary data. So just a note here, NB. In data analysis.
You can answer if you want to.
No, it's fine. I'll sort all of that out later. In data analysis, NB. Accuracy of information is always a consideration. Okay, so why is it a consideration? It's because there is bias in terms of your choice. Right, so do you agree, in those methods of sampling, who decides on what to sample? The business. So now if the business wants to sample something, they're going to sample something that's probably going to give them a specific view.
Yeah.
Okay, because do you want people to tell you that your product is bad? Probably not. So now what are you going to do? You're probably going to try sample or survey people that are going to tell you that the product is good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that element of bias. Okay, and that's what they're talking about here. Sampling bias, questionnaire bias, and other forms of bias. But bias is the problem. So in data analysis, the accuracy of information is always a consideration. Biases can apply, or biases can be included. And what are the different biases? Sampling bias / questionnaire bias / other forms, other biases. Okay, so what does the word bias mean?
Not fair.
Not fair, exactly.
So this isn't under questionnaire, you say this is under how accurate.
Yeah, that's just accuracy. It's just a consideration. That's why I put that here, NB, accuracy. Okay, in data analysis, comma, accuracy of information is always a consideration. Right, so whenever you're looking at data analysis, you always have to consider this whole element of bias. Right, and as a surveyor, as an individual running a business, you want to eliminate bias as much as possible. Because the more bias you have, the more subjective your data is. And data shouldn't be objective. Data should be objective. Okay, the next bit requires some math, so I don't want to rush to the math. I think we can cover this after the break.
Yeah.
Because yeah, we've been doing a lot, so I don't want to overwhelm you now with the calculations. That might be a bit too much in this session. Let's rather come back fresh and then actually discuss the measurements. A lot of this you've actually done already. I remember we did range. I remember we did averages in mathematics. So some of this you'll actually recall. For example, if I mention the word median, you probably have an idea of what that is, hey? Yeah. Okay, so that won't take that long, and then at least we can complete that properly instead of having to rush through it. And then we've got a nice chapter coming up. This one's a nice one, marketing mix. I think you'll like this one because it talks about exactly, and you already know what that is. Okay, good. Perfect.